Welcome back to our news bulletin. We start with Turkey, which says a Syrian army helicopter has been shot down in northwest Idlib province. The defense ministry says the helicopter was downed by rebels as they pushed back Syrian troops from the town of Naireb. Tensions between Damascus and Ankara escalated after Syrian forces launched a renewed push to capture rebel-held Idlib last month. Over the past week, Syrian forces' attacks have killed 13 Turkish soldiers in the province, prompting a retaliation from Ankara. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Syrian government will pay a heavy price for attacks on Turkish troops. Meanwhile, Syrian forces have seized control of a key highway in northwest region for the first time since 2012. Kremlin has called for implementation of a ceasefire deal between Russia and Turkey, saying attacks on coalition forces must stop. In Afghanistan, 6 people, including 4 soldiers, have been killed in a suicide attack in the capital city of Kabul. The Interior Ministry says 12 others were wounded in the explosion outside government-run Marshal Fahim Military Academy. The ministry said a suicide bomber detonated his explosive in the vicinity of Kambar Square. Officials have warned that the number of casualties may rise. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack yet. Indian-occupied Kashmir is observing a complete shutdown on the 36th martyrdom anniversary of liberation leader Muhammad Maqbool Butt. India hanged the pro-freedom activist in New Delhi's Tihar jail in 1984. All parties Hurriyat Conference, Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front and other pro-freedom parties have called for protests and rallies. Meanwhile, journalists in the valley have decried threats, attacks and intimidation by Indian troops. They said New Delhi has curbed media freedom as internet shutdown hampers reporting. The valley is reeling under Indian curfew and communications blackout for 191 days. In India, New Delhi police has battened charge Jamia Millia University students protesting against the citizenship law. Health officials said over 10 students sustained critical injuries. They said some students have suffered internal injuries as they were hit on chest with sticks. Meanwhile, protests against the act have continued in eastern Jharkhand state despite a ban on gatherings and rallies. Rights activists and citizens are holding rallies and sit-ins in the state's Jamshedpur city. The government is facing countrywide protests against the law for the last 3 months. In India, counting for 70 seats of Delhi Legislative Assembly elections is currently underway. Early trends show Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party is lagging behind. The trends show Aam Aadmi Party is winning in 54 to 56 constituencies. BJP is leading in 12 to 14 seats, while the Indian National Congress is yet to open its account. The state elections come amid countrywide protest against the Modi government's new controversial Citizenship Act. In earlier state elections, the ruling BJP lost in Jharkhand and Maharashtra. The death toll from the new coronavirus in China has risen to 1,016. China's National Health Commission reported 108 new deaths, the highest daily tally since the outbreak began. Nearly 2,478 new cases were confirmed, bringing the total to over 42,000. More in this report.
China has removed several senior officials over the handling of the coronavirus outbreak. On Monday, some 103 died in Hubei province alone, a daily record. But the number of new infections nationally was down almost 20% from the day before. China's President Xi Jinping visited a hospital in the capital, Beijing.
I believe that you will fulfill your sacred mission extraordinarily. I hope you and all medical staff in Titan Hospital in the capital and in the whole country can fight this defense war, this overall war and the people's war with full confidence. We must build up our confidence. We will eventually win.
World Health Organization experts have praised China's healthcare system.
The health system in China is sophisticated and is capable of delivering high levels of intensive care. And when you consider that 90 to 100% of patients in hospital require supplemental oxygen, 20 to 25% of those patients require intensive care, and 5 to 10% of patients may require some form of mechanical ventilation.
The novel coronavirus is affecting 28 countries and territories around the world.
In Geneva, the WHO warns the novel coronavirus is a very grave threat for the planet as it hosts the first major conference on fighting the epidemic. 400 scientists are participating in the two-day meeting as the death toll from the virus surged past 1,000 with over 42,700 confirmed cases in China. The conference aims to review how the virus is transmitted and the possibility of developing vaccines against it. WHO head Tedros Adhanom said, while 99% of all coronavirus cases are in China, but it still poses a threat to the rest of the world. Participants of the conference will also discuss the possible source of the virus, which is thought to have originated in bats.
We are still in a very early stage of understanding this virus, how it is transmitted, the source of the virus, the incubation period, the clinical feature, the severity of it, etc. One of them is the incubation period. We are saying it's from 1 to 14 days.
In another development, the EU says it will host an extraordinary meeting of health ministers on Thursday to discuss the novel coronavirus outbreak. The European Commissioner for Crisis Management said now is the time to join forces to stop the epidemic. So far, 30 cases of the new strain have been found in Europe. The Global Health Organization has warned cases outside of China could accelerate. The conference will discuss the spread of the disease and the bloc's response to the outbreak. Last week, the German health minister suggested Europe could impose restrictions on travelers from China. Singapore has kicked off Asia's largest aerospace event under heightened scrutiny as thousands of visitors shunned the airshow over coronavirus fears. Over 70 exhibitors, including U.S. aerospace giant Lockheed Martin, Canada's Bombardier, and plane maker de Havilland have decided to skip the show. 10 Chinese companies have also pulled out after Singapore imposed a ban on people traveling from China. Officials said they have taken extra precautions, including fever screening for attendees. The biennial Singapore Air Show usually attracts hundreds of global airspace firms and airlines to the financial hub, but this may not be the case this year. In Lebanon, thousands of protesters have gathered outside the parliament in Beirut against a vote of confidence for Prime Minister Hassan Diab's new cabinet. Security forces fired tear gas and water cannon at demonstrators trying to block MPs from reaching the parliament. The parliament is set to vote on a government policy statement that says painful steps are needed to address the financial crisis. Protesters lobbed rocks at security forces deployed at several locations around the city center. The new government took office nearly 3 months after Saad al-Hariri resigned under pressure from sweeping protests. Protesters have expressed distrust in the ruling class and the newly appointed prime minister. Libyan strongman Khalifa Haftar has been sued in a U.S. federal court for his alleged role in committing war crimes in Tripoli. In the lawsuit, 6 families are asking for $1 billion in damages for relatives who were targeted. The plaintiff said the lawsuit will bring to light Haftar's human rights abuses. The attorney said extrajudicial killings and torture were committed with impunity and no fear of accountability. They accuse Haftar of being a war criminal and say he is a U.S. citizen with assets and family members in the country. Forces loyal to Haftar began a campaign against last April to topple Libya's UN-recognized government in Tripoli. The World Health Organization said over 1,000 people have died and about 5,500 wounded in clashes between the sides. Iran is celebrating the 41st anniversary of the Islamic Revolution, which toppled the Pahlavi monarchy in 1979. In Tehran, thousands are rallying in 12 major routes across the capital, leading to Freedom Square. Speaking at a rally, President Hassan Rouhani said the revolution was for people from all walks of life. Criticizing the U.S., he said the massive turnout is the best response to Washington and oppressors. The president said congregations on this day show that people of Iran respect their freedom and independence. In Bangladesh, 16 Rohingya refugees have died after a boat capsized near St. Martin's Island in the Bay of Bengal. The Coast Guard say 70 refugees on their way to Malaysia have been rescued. Officials said some 130 people were on the fishing vessel for the hazardous journey. They said an operation is underway to save the remaining people. Officials say all of the migrants are mainly from the refugee camps in Cox's Bazar who were lured by traffickers. Around 750,000 Rohingya who fled the Myanmar military crackdown in 2017 reside in Bangladesh. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. In Ireland, the main opposition party Fianna Fáil has won the most seats in the country's general elections. The party has taken 38 seats, only one ahead of Sinn Féin, who recorded a historic result. The ruling party Fianna Gael finished third with 35 seats. With first preferences counted, Sinn Féin led the table with 24.5% of the vote. It was followed on 22% by Fianna Fáil and 21% for Fine Gael. The two traditional main parties have ruled out a coalition with left-wing Sinn Féin, citing its tax policies and IRA passed as deterrents.
We've commenced discussions and contact with the leaders of the Green Party, the Social Democrats, People Before Profit, the Labour Party. I hope that we will meet over the coming days to explore in real terms whether we have the numbers and whether the political will exists.
A combination of two of the three big parties will require the support of other lawmakers or smaller parties to form a government. Moving on to Venezuela, whose President Nicolas Maduro says he will go to the international courts to fight U.S. sanctions. This comes after the U.S. Treasury Department added the Venezuelan airline Conviasa and its entire fleet to a sanctions list. President Maduro said he will not let Washington inflict damage on the airline. He called the move a terror attack and blamed U.S.-backed leader Juan Guaido for the sanctions.
It is a terrorist attack by the right wing ordered by Donald Trump and Ivan Duque and by the homeland betrayer Juan Guaido against the public services of Venezuela.
Toppled Bolivian leader Evo Morales has left Argentina for Cuba for a medical procedure. Morales moved to Argentina from Bolivia when his October election victory was voided after accusations of vote rigging. Morales' spokesperson said the leader took an unscheduled flight to Cuba for health reasons and will return this weekend. Since arriving in Argentina, Morales has campaigned for his Movement for Socialist Party ahead of Bolivia's upcoming presidential election. Recent opinion polls put the MAS ahead against the divided opposition, but not by enough to avoid a second-round runoff. In Brazil, heavy rains have pounded Sao Paulo, causing severe flooding. Major road arteries are submerged in water, causing traffic jams. Commuter trains have been stopped in their tracks by the heavy rain. The Titiate and Pequeores River broke their banks, inundating low-lying areas and stranding cars on bridges. Weather reports suggest heavier rains are expected to hit Sao Paulo and surrounding areas in the coming days. Australia says torrential rain could put out the remaining bushfires in New South Wales by the end of the week. Since Friday, parts of the Australian state have experienced their heaviest rainfall in 30 years. The Rural Fire Service said they will be able to extinguish the remaining 24 fires, 4 of them uncontained. The downpour has already doused 2 of the biggest and longest running blazes. Australia has been battling hundreds of bushfires since September, which experts have ascribed to climate change. In Queensland, just 1 fire remains active, while 9 are still burning in South Australia state. Iraq's capital city of Baghdad has recorded second snowfall in a century, bringing pleasure to the residents of war-battered country. Dozens of people came out to enjoy the rare weather amid high political tensions. The last recorded snowfall in Baghdad was in 2008, but it was quick and slushy. Some of Iraq's residents said they are witnessing the white flakes for the first time in their lives. The rare moment provided an opportunity for families to share the snowy weather. Iraq's meteorological center has predicted more snowfall till Wednesday. The country has been hit by a succession of extreme weather events in recent years. Weather experts say Iraq lacks the funding or infrastructure to cope with climate change and the desertification of once productive land. We're taking a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In a latest development, Sudan has agreed to hand over former President Omar al-Bashir to the International Criminal Court. Bashir is facing charges of crimes against humanity related to the Darfur conflict in 2003. In 2008, the UN estimated that 300,000 people died because of the war, though Khartoum disputes the figure. Bashir's 30-year rule came to an end last year when he was removed in a military coup amid protests in the country. Moving on, in Indonesia, a cafe worker is struggling to persuade his small community of Parepare to keep a cleaner city. The Ministry of Environment and Forestry says Parepare produces around 2.7 tons of unmanaged waste each day. The hero of the story has found an interesting way to get the attention of residents on the matter. What is it? Watch this report to find out.
36-year-old Rudy Hartono bought a Spider-Man outfit months ago to please his nephew. He didn't know he would find a noble cause to fight for. Each morning, he now picks up rubbish dumped or dropped onto the streets and beaches, wearing his Marvel costume for everyone to see and follow him.
My mission is to encourage and provide an example to the society through the famous character of Spider-Man to protect the environment and do real cleaning activities because environmental cleanliness creates healthy communities.
Indonesia, an archipelago of more than 17,000 islands, is believed to be the world's second largest producer of plastic waste after China, most of which ends up in the ocean.
Minimizing plastic waste is the most important thing to do because plastic is difficult to decompose.
Hartono is surely successful in his mission.
We need a creative role model to foster our interest in protecting the environment.
Me, especially as a youth, this is actually my duty.
Hartono now wants the government to pay attention to the issue and find a way to manage the waste.
US President Donald Trump has proposed a nearly $5 trillion budget to Congress. The budget is a blueprint for Trump's policy priorities and a starting point for negotiations with Congress. The document proposes a 21% cut in foreign aid to $44 billion in the next fiscal year. It seeks major cuts to Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program. The Pentagon budget will see an $800 million increase and a $2 billion allocation for the US-Mexico border wall. The White House wants to cut spending by nearly $4.5 trillion in 10 years and reduce the deficit by the same amount.
I think that ultimately the administration and Congress will go through a rigorous process where we will look line by line where we think that there are opportunities to pull back and where we think there are opportunities to invest. And Congress will always have a different view. Ultimately, the president will sign a document at the end of the day.
Stock markets across Europe are trading higher as investors continue to monitor the spread of the coronavirus and its impact on the global economy. Investors are pushing a fresh rally into basic resources stocks. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 1% higher despite NMC Health's shares shedding over 9%, following a 32% surge on Monday. Frankfurt's DAX has gained 1%. The CAC 40 in Paris has also gained over 0.5%. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.